With the story we are telling, the elements that resonate as it pertains to Billy Chase is that the deeper he got undercover, the more he started to unravel mentally. In a city like Bridgeport, Billy had targets. He had prey that he wanted to get at all costs. One of those targets was Mariano Sanchez, the leader of the number one family. In order to understand the number one family, and in order to understand the streets, I went directly to an individual who worked the street corners for that drug crew. When people watch television shows or movies that take place in the drug world, a lot of times the stories create caricatures. When you talk to someone that lived the life up close and personal, the nuances of what happened become more clear and more concise. Joel Gonzalez has lived inside Bridgeport all of his adult life, and his point of view was different from anyone you have heard thus far.
Yeah, the hot spot in the west side always been like on State Street area between Howard Avenue and Park Avenue, which is the area there. That's pretty much the area that I lived from the time that we moved from P.T. Barnum, from about 1970, around there. 1977, more exactly. 70, I spent 5 years in Puerto Rico, came back in 1977, and we went, my family, we were raised basically on State Street. From 1977 to the present, I lived in that whole area there. That's always been the hot spot. That's where, where the good, the bad, and the ugly took place. That's where, after graduation, I graduated in 1984 from Bassick. After that, in 1984, that was the middle of a recession. There was no jobs. There was really, there was really nowhere to go. And I, from the people that I grew up with on State Street, I was pretty much like the only one who had, by 1984, the only one who had graduated from high school. Most of them, the great majority of them were all, they're all dropped out of school. Many of them got involved in drugs and trafficking and using, and and many of them went on to this is 84. Keep in mind, this is right around the time that the movie Scarface with Tony Montana. That's when that movie came out, and I think that movie sort of like set everything in motion, as far as drug trafficking, cocaine trafficking in the streets went. Everybody wanted to be Tony Montana, and back in the 80s, and I was one of them that I wasn't. When I graduated in '84, I was pretty much a virgin. I was a square. I wasn't into any of that, But then you graduate from high school. There's nothing to do. There's no work, nothing around. Everybody, is driving cars and dressing up fancy, money, and selling cocaine. Basically, back then was main powder cocaine. And that's where I got caught in between all that stuff. And that's where I got to everybody that I grew up with. One of the main characters, one of the people who were well known traffickers back in that era was Mariano Sanchez, and I grew up with Mariano. We were from the same street, same neighborhood.
With the story of the war on drugs, the highlight reel of it is always the kingpin, the guy with the cars, the clothes, the mythology. But like any machine, the low-level workers who churned out a working-class living has always fascinated me. There actually were working-class drug dealers, the guys that made a good living, but didn't live a crazy, lavish lifestyle. They were street soldiers on the front lines, getting dirty and into action.
When you decide it's 84, you're leaving high school, and you sort of did you make a conscious decision that, hey, I'm gonna go into the drug trade? And how does that actually work at the street level?
Listen, you know, I where I come from and where all these guys that I grew up with, we had one thing we had in common. A lot of us had in common. Most of us were from single-parent homes. Most of us were being raised by our mothers. Some of them by their grandmothers. You know, Mariano was one of them. I think. I never, you know, Mariano's Carmen Fred was not Mariano's mother. He called her mom, but that was his stepmom. You know, I think that one of the things was single-parent and poverty. In my case, my situation, for example, I had a younger brother. He's still alive. My younger brother was one of them that dropped out of school, and he went on and started selling for Mariano, for the Sanchez crew, you know, number one family. So, you got to understand. For example, you know how many times you will come from school with my books, ready to go do homework and stuff like that, and go home. Next thing you know, there's no lights. They cut off the lights. I recall one time, for example, one time in a situation like that, you know, they had cut the light. And I remember that it was Mariano Sanchez who went and paid the bill and had the electricity restored at my house. Okay, that's the kind of person Mariano's always been. You know, that's what when Lenny wrote the book, and I seen, you know, when I read the book and all that, I said, damn, they demonized the number one family, or Mariano. Basically, number one family was not a mob thing. It wasn't. You know, the number one family came about the death. This is how the name came about. Number one family. It came out on State Street.
Any drug crew always has an origin story, or a singular event that sets in motion the building of legends or these street figures that were targeted by law enforcement. Coming out of the 1970s in many American cities, a lot of the drug dealers came out of community organizing backgrounds. They were the guys who had a political mind or saw the racism inside America and decided there was no justice. The system was rigged. And their way of rebelling was to create their own system. And that was gangster capitalism.
One time in I think it was 1985, Mariano had a little brother named Geronimo. And he was, I think, crossing from the Duchess hamburger place on State Street. And he crossed the street. He ran across the street. A car came, hit him, and killed him. Okay, he was killed there on State Street. So, you know, this isn't when Mariano was when the cocaine trade started. You know, he was starting to boom, as we say. You know, that it was really getting busy. It was, you know, and then Hedda was killed, coming, you know, crossing the street on State Street. And then during the funeral, Mariano's sister, Susie Sanchez, she decided, her and other family members decided that, you know, they would make T-shirts, you know, for the funeral with his picture, and then, you know, she was, the camaraderie, you know, the coming together that death brought a lot of people, a lot of us who had beef, who were fighting with each other, who were, came together. And Susie was the one who raised that number one family. And it stuck, but it wasn't a number one family about like a mob family or anything like that. It wasn't intended, nothing like that. The teachers that were around, they were photographed in the news about that, people walking around with number one family. It had nothing to do with drug trafficking. It had to do with, the coming together of all of us who were raised on the West Side, who from the same neighborhood and all that, and we came together as a group. Not everybody who were members or friends of the number one family, not all of them were selling drugs, not all of them were involved or anything like that. So that's how that came about. That was everybody think that it was the number one family thing came about the drug trafficking. It had nothing to do with drug trafficking or anything like that. It just got entangled in it and all that, and misinterpreted by the press.
Sure. And was the number one family mostly guys who had family from Puerto Rico or were Puerto Rican, or did it run the gamut of race?
Yeah, well, at the beginning, in the beginning, well, keep in mind that back then, like that area of State Street there was mainly Puerto Ricans. All of us who were there, all of us who grew up together there, all of us were Puerto Ricans.
It's an odd thing to think about, that a drug crew could actually have branding, but it's no different than, say, Coca-Cola. The crew was branded, the Coke was branded. You had to have names and clothing that represented who you ran with. I also know that the media and the police are notorious for creating a narrative around a drug crew that maybe was based in half-truths. Any cop or prosecutor always likes to bolster a story, make it sound better, make them look better. It is just what happens in the drug game.
No, it had nothing to do with family anywhere. It was people here, living in the West Side and in the neighborhood, State Street, Click, and Colorado Avenue, that mainly in that area there, and people who always hung around or were always in that area there, but no, it wasn't mainly the members were Puerto Rican. Then around around 86, around there, mid 86, Mariano had one of his cousins was Luis Robles, Papo. Papo was, when he went to Bassick, he played football. And in football teams were in a lot of blacks and all that, and he was friends with a lot of blacks. I think, but it was Papo and who started bringing some of his black friends and introducing it. And then motorcycle was another thing. Number one family people members, some of them started getting motorcycles and all that. And then they would get together with other folks who had motorcycles, whether they were black or whatever, The number one family turned out to be the Clinton crew turned out to be pretty much a diverse group. We had whites, blacks, and Hispanics, and Puerto Ricans, mainly. It started mainly as Puerto Ricans from that area there, and as they became more popular with chicks, bringing white girlfriends, and before you knew it, it was colored. It was really nothing about any color, It was white, Hispanic. Most of the customers were white, There was a huge clientele of white folks from all over, Connecticut. It wasn't just people from Bridgeport. People who come down from all over Connecticut to go, because you could go there. It was pretty much safe. You could go in. It was quantity and quality, which is the key. You got good cocaine, for a good price, and it was safe, in and out, it was always there. It got to a point you could go there practically any time and get something,
What was, it's always interesting, right? I think most people's intake of information from the war on drugs is probably from the mainstream media, right? And talking to someone like yourself who was there, what was your analysis specifically in Bridgeport of the drug trade and how it worked? And looking back on it now, with sort of as we get older, we always have perspective. What was your analysis of it then, and what is it now?
Like any business, you need a thriving customer base. And the wealthy areas around Bridgeport have always funded the drug trade inside the city to a massive extent. Places like Darien, Greenwich, Westport, Fairfield, even Stanford. These are some of the most wealthy areas in the country, supported by Wall Street money and people who don't want to live in Manhattan. You can't fault entrepreneurs setting up a system to reach a thriving marketplace. There would be no war on drugs if huge amounts of America didn't shoot, snort, or smoke. It's that simple.
One of the things that was different from back then that changed really the dynamics was the price of cocaine. Back then, there was a time when I was out there in the 80s, late 80s, where, you connected with the right person, you could get a kilo of cocaine for $12,000. You try finding a kilo of cocaine now for $12,000. You're not going to get it. You're not going to find it. And I think that's one of the things that happened. That when the price of cocaine went up, boom, that's where, it wasn't like a game that anybody can get into, When Pablo Escobar was brought down, that was like pretty much the end of the era. The price of cocaine just shot up to about, back then it was, I think it's still the same. From what I understand today, kilo goes to about between $25,000-$30,000, I think. It's what.
Yeah, maybe even more. Today. I mean, I've heard.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, cocaine is not as cheap as it was, back then. In the late '80s, mid '80s. And so that kind of changed the dynamics. But at the same time, it sort of just. And then another thing was that I didn't know, for example, when I was out there, I used to wonder how the hell are these people able to sniff all this fucking coke so fast? And to show you how naive I didn't know nothing about crack. It turns out that in the mid '80s, a lot of the people who were buying the powder coke, the reason why they were buying so much and the reason why the Marianos of the world and Escobar made a lot of it was because it was a lot of that coke wasn't being sniffed; it was being cooked to smoke as crack. And I didn't know that. Then I think like it was, towards the end of the 80s, around the 90s, the beginning of the 90s, around there. Next thing you know, you start seeing crack vials. Cocaine, the crack, crack cocaine being sold, went from the powder to the crack cocaine. That's where the crime and all that really went out of control. It's like, it was, I didn't know. And then that's when I was, I got it. I said, oh, that's what it was. Next thing a lot of the people who used to buy cocaine from me at that time, I would see them around the neighborhood and all that buying crack. Buying the vials of the crack. Then that's when it hit me. I said, damn, that's why, this motherfucker used to smoke this shit. He used to buy it in powder, cook it, and smoke it. That's what was going on, But that hit me after. I didn't know.
Let me explain something real quick. For the street level dealer, crack cocaine was comparable to nothing. The high was so powerful, so quick. And for drugs, it was pretty economical. That the repeat business, the speed with which the money and the drugs changed hands, was a monumental shift.
But one of the dynamics, crack changed the dynamics. The price dropped, and changed the dynamic. And then crack, when they started selling in a vial and all that, vials of crack and all that. And it was like, and I think. This is what from my observation. For example, when you sell powder coke, say you buy powder coke, what do? You buy the powder coke, you go to wherever you're going to go, apartment, wherever, and you have to go through the process of cooking it and all that, and then smoking it. But now you take that away. Now you provide crack, already cooked, already in a little vial, ready to smoke. So you get people who come in and immediately they'll go in the car right around the corner right there and smoke it right there, and that's it. So, now you got a crackhead out there, stoned, as opposed to one that's in an apartment or in his little room somewhere smoking and cooking and stuff on his own stuff. Now you got people like on the go, instantly, from the vial to the pipe and boom, and nonstop, running around you know, I mean, you've probably seen many videos or photos of, seen it yourself, people walking around with a crack pipe smoking,
Sure.
Yeah. So we went out from little from behind the scenes, quietly, under behind closed door kind of thing, to out in the open, like nobody. I don't give a fuck. I'm a crackhead. That's it.
Sure.
And that's.
At that time, obviously, right, there's sort of this evolution of the police. And what was your analysis of how the police inside of Bridgeport handled sort of the drug trade? Did you see how that changed?
No, but it's different now. If the police officers back then, if the police officers today did what the police officers used to do back then, there was association with, come on, we knew a lot of the cops. We went to school with a lot of them. Billy Chase, for example, was able to infiltrate one because he wasn't known here. He got, his identity became public pretty quick. He was easy to identify. He used to walk around with an earring that gave him away, for example.
He used to walk around with what? What would he used to walk around?
Earring in his left ear, and that was a giveaway. A black guy with an earring, it was easy to spot. In the description, clean shaven, pretty looking, pretty boy kind of type. That's when the description of keep in mind, he came in and then he started. It's not like he came in, set everybody up, and they picked everybody up at the same time. No, he would do an operation, set somebody up, nail them, they get arrested. Next thing you know, then they move on to the next person, the next case. But every time you did one bust or you busted somebody and that person knew that you were the one who set them up, they didn't know who you were maybe exactly, but they could describe you, and that's what was going on with Billy Chase. Pretty early, he was already identified or described, and even with the description, although a lot of people knew what the guy looked like, some of the guys that I knew, he still nailed him with the earring still on,
To me, that was always weird to me, right? Because Bridgeport, at its core, is really a small place, right?
Yes.
So if you have an undercover who's kind of like going in and out of these neighborhoods, I guess the other thing you have to take into consideration is no one really had cell phones. They didn't have computers.
Exactly.
He
would not be able to do what he did back then as easily. And it would have been. Mariano had a get together or a party or something like that at the house on Indian Avenue. And I was there, and a lot of the guys was there. Now, one of the Reds, Juicy, and then Billy Chase was there. He came to the party there. And now Juicy had already heard about him. And he swore, in front of him, Juicy confronted Billy Chase. And, and he started telling him, look, you're undercover, blah, 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 and this and that. So then it got to the point where he was denying and shit like that. So then Juicy challenged him and said, if you're not a cop, then go ahead and take a hit. He gave him the 20, like a 20 of coke, and Billy Chase took a hit. That happened right there in Indian Avenue. He either do that but his cover was, and still red, the sword that he's. Now, keep in mind that I saw him there that day there. A little while later, I'm on State Street, driving down State Street, heading towards Park Avenue, right before the light. And there's like a green, dark green Camry, Toyota Camry. That's the car that he was driving at around that time. And he was the dark green Camry pulled up next to me. And when I look like this, I see like the guy signaling at me, trying to get my attention. So when I look at him, and then I see I see the black guy, I see the black guy. I look at him, and first, as soon as I saw him, I said, Billy Chin. Then I look like real closer, I see the earring. So then he started like signal, like putting his hand like that to his nose, like, you got any coke or anything like that, So then I looked at him, and I'm looking at him, and then I went like this, and I stuck my hand out with my middle finger. He's from my car, I'm on the right side, I'm the left side of the road, he's on the right side, okay, and I reached over like that with my finger singing, I stuck my finger at him like that, and I drove away.
And how did your sort of story within the drug trade end, in a sense? Obviously, you survived, right? Which a lot of people
I survived. Everybody say, sometimes people ask if you ever been to the military. I say, I survived the State Street Wars. I think one of my biggest strength was, having graduated. For some reason, I've always had fucking bad luck finding work. Despite being smart, despite being able, I was, I wasn't out like some of these guys. Quit while you're ahead, and I was one of them. You quit while you're ahead. Around the 90s, right around the 90s, an element is he started really getting ugly. He started getting, you had different people moving into the neighborhoods, coming in. The cowboys, real cowboys, started popping up, and it didn't look good. It didn't end well with some of the people that I knew. A lot of them just didn't make it. I could see I was sober enough or whatever, to be able to step back and see where is it going. I was either going to end up killing somebody, not because I want to go out killing, but you're forced to kill in situations in which, there are cowboys out there, and they're out there, they've been robbing you, they're out there to rob you, and perhaps even take you out of the game. And in the 90s, that there was quite a few groups who were into that. I guess they figure that by force, you kill this guy. Latin Kings came into the picture. Latin Kings were one of the groups who were out there, who came in and started taking over the streets by force, by literally killing rivals or anybody, and taking over the trades. The crack houses, and the abandoned houses that the corners, anything or any area where there was a profitable corner or house where they could make quick money, and so they would move in and by force, and take over. I, among others, that's what we did. We decided, hey, it's quit while you're ahead, or step back, quit, relax, let this whatever pass and come back later if you can or whatever or want to. But it was definitely a time around that 90. That was definitely the time to quit or get ready to die or get ready for a long prison sentence. And that was, the writing was very, very clear. Clearly, the writing was on the wall. That's, you got to make a decision. The sooner you make that decision, the better for you. And that's what I did. I decided to just chill. I got a job. One of the things I think that helped me a lot was, I would say, Joe, for example, I've always voted. I've always been reading. I like to read and all that, and I got into politics. By 1995, I had gotten elected to the 131st district. The 131st district was run fucking down. This was one of the ugliest, worst. In 6 years, that district was able to be the force behind the changes that took place in the 131st district. Of course, that's under the first administration of Joe Ganim. I think that one of the things that helped me a lot was the when the city gave me a job, and I still have that job to this day. 22 years now.
When Lenny Grimaldi told me about the story of Joel Gonzalez and working for the number one family, I knew it had to be a part of the story of Bridgeport and Billy Chase. But there was a part of Joel's story, after researching, that blew me away. On March 8th, 1994, Joel Gonzalez chopped off the index finger of his left hand on the steps of the state capitol in Hartford to express his version of justice to violent gun users during a historic violent crime period in the city and state. Here's Joel explaining.
That was March 8th, 1984. This thing with, to this day, it makes me, it would not now. Now it just in one ear and out the other. Now I don't even, I heard it all. I just, I guess I'm getting old. I just more laid back now. Don't really give a shit. Hear something like that. Oh, I've heard it before. But yeah, that was 1984 in the Connecticut State Capitol. Keep in mind where I come from. It was nothing. There was gun just, for example, the number one family, hardly any of us ever messed with guns. But as the traffic, as the business went and progressed and the money started coming in, and before we're talking a lot of money. Clinton Avenue became to be known as a quick stop for anybody who wants to do an armed robbery and get a good amount of money, in one robbery. So we became targets. You have people who come in and give me a 25. Next thing they pull a gun in your face and they take your drugs and your money. And and that's what happens. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna start arming. Put one guy lookouts and with guns. And not now if anybody tried anything happened. You have firepower. So the guns, we were forced pretty much to use guns and possess guns. We didn't go out. Well, I don't know anybody there at Clinton Avenue, especially the older guys, the old crew, go out and, go anywhere to start trouble and start threatening people with no. You came in there and you look for trouble, you pull out a gun or something like that, then, you're most likely you're gonna have a gun battle on your hands, and that's what happened with Clinton Avenue. So then, for some reason, I never liked the guy. I came close, accidental shootings, being accidentally shot. One of them was, I remember Richard Crespo, one of Mariano's brothers, who passed away. We were at the house across the street from where, from 83 Clinton Avenue, and this is before, we were, selling drugs and all that, but across the street, and then somebody had a gun in the room, and they were fucking around playing with the gun. Next thing you know, I was laying in one of the bed, we're watching TV, and when I looked like this, one of the guys had the gun, and next thing the fucking gun just went off, like right in front of my face. I almost got killed that day, came inches, There was other incidents, like that, close calls, real close. I had one time, another friend, gun went off, so damn close that the powder just felt like somebody just threw sand in your face like that. I mean, and the ears, my ears were just fucking like, there was, guns, I had a lot of respect for guns. I see a gun, I hated to have it in my hands. I just didn't like it. I was always, it is what it is. A gun, a gun to me always. So anyway, and even when I straightened up, still gun was, the problem. Gun is one problem, drug is one problem, gun is another. You can take drugs away, you're still gonna have a gun problem. Period. Because that's you don't see somebody throwing a a rock of cocaine at you. No, but they'll put a lead on you. They can't hurt you with with a kilo. They're gonna hit you with a kilo over the head. They'll most likely hit you with a gun over the head. But so the gun will always be there, even if you eliminated the drugs and all that. So anyway, one of the things always happened, always this thing with politicians. Probably always, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna. To this day, you keep hearing the cry, we're gonna get rid of crime, we're gonna get rid of this, we're gonna stop gun violence. No, you're fucking not. It's gonna be here with us for a long time.